Pleasant Grove City Council for our work session on this Tuesday, March the 18th, 2025. And welcome everyone that's joined us here. And we'll start out, turn time over to our city administrator for our budget discussion.
Well, I woke up this morning and thought, what a great week for a park opening, you know.
Was that
We're just
at the
gonna have to,
whiteout?
yeah, we're just gonna have to shovel the 1 foot of snow, but actually it's supposed to be a little better by the time we get to Saturday. There's supposed to be some rain maybe Saturday morning, but since we're doing this at 2 o'clock, we're hoping that it's not gonna be super warm, probably in the 50s, but I anticipate we're still gonna have quite a few people show up, so that'll be a good thing. We've put that out on our social media. We've let people know that this is happening, and once that starts getting used, there's going to be no stopping. Okay, we're going to discuss budget, and I think you're familiar that Councilmember Rogers, who's not here right now, but I think will be here in a minute, he sent an email on Thursday with some questions, and so we want to go through those kind of one by one. I'm assuming that the council members want to hear all the answers on what Steve was asking. So we're going to do that. Todd was kind enough to make a bulleted list that I'm going to use as kind of my template. However, I'm going to jump around different than maybe the order the questions were asked. So with that, first, I invited Kim Wilson with Miss PG. We talked yesterday. We sent an email, was it yesterday? It might have been yesterday, or I can't remember what day it is. Today's Tuesday. Of kind of her request, her budget request that had some details that the council was inquiring about what the current funds go to and what the new funds would be used for. And then yesterday she had another brainstorm on how to do the budget. And as she was walking me through it, I said, it might be best if you just come and walk the council through it so that it doesn't have to go from her to me to you. So with that, I'll have Kim come up and kind of talk about what's going on in her mind in regards to Miss PG.
Clarification, in my mind in regards to Miss PG. Thank you for letting me come here. And I hope you'll just indulge me for a minute while I give you some information. And then I'm happy to answer any of your questions. And Scott talked about the PG organization, Miss PG, and then the secondary issue is the float. So I'll talk Miss PG first. So I took over the program in 2018. At that point, our scholarship, the scholarship amount that we were awarding on stage was $5,750. We have increased them over the years. And last year, we awarded $12,250, and this year we anticipate at least that, if not more. One thing that we have done is offered non-participant or non-finalist scholarships, because in our preparation, we have the girls doing a lot of prep work. We have them meeting, we have them serving. And so I'm not one to say everyone should get a trophy, right? I'm not a mom that believes that, but I do believe if you put in the work, you should be rewarded for that. So we do have non-finalist scholarships. So that amount includes those non-finalist scholarships. I'm hopeful that we can actually increase them a little bit, because right now we give them each $250. That doesn't help with school much, but it helps some. So we're hoping we can increase those this year, if not, maybe next year. We have not increased scholarship other than adding the non-finalists for 4 years. So our scholarships have remained the same because our budget has remained the same. What I want to help you understand is that you see the girls at our events, right? You see them at Strawberry Days, you see them at Halloween, you see them at the Christmas tree lighting, Memorial Day and Veterans Day program. What you don't see is that they're at library activities often. Stacy will call and say, we need some girls, and they go. They are at the rec center for all the parties and all the events, helping direct cats, herd cats, you know, the kids are all over the place, and doing activities there. They are at all the school carnivals in our community. Every elementary school that has a carnival, our girls are there. They are in the classrooms presenting. And maybe you don't know this, but for the last 5 years, it has been the Miss PG contestants that have filled the eggs for the Eagles Lodge Easter egg hunt. Last year, I think we did about 14,000. This year, we are on track to do 20,000 eggs. Not only are they filling them, but they show up on that Saturday morning and they disperse them and help guide that Easter egg hunt. They have service projects that you don't see. Just Saturday, we had a bunch of the girls and their families show up at Anderson Park to clean Anderson Park. Those are things that you don't see because they're not in front of you. They are serving silently for our community. They raise money for their CSIs that they are passionate about, and CSI Community Service Initiative. Each one of them have something different. They're raising money and serving in the community for those as well. They have partnered with Choose Kindness for events. They have partnered with Hope Squads. They've partnered with PG Cares, and they are serving our community silently and in the background. Couple of things that maybe some of you don't know, but I got involved in this in 2013. My daughter came home one night, said, I want to do it. So we were all in. After a minute, we were all in. Hope Squads were not a thing at that point. Dr. Greg Hudnall was the principal at Provo High School, and he implemented Hope Squads at Provo High School because of the rate of suicide in his school. After a couple of years, that suicide rate was 0 in his school. My daughter Lauren, as a title holder of Miss Pleasant Grove, brought Greg Hudnall to Pleasant Grove High School, and I sat in on that meeting. That is why we have Hope Squads at Pleasant Grove and now in Alpine School District and across the state, because she brought Greg Hudnall in. So a title holder brought Hope Squads. We all just got out of Kindness Month for February. Eric worked with a couple of other organizations back in 2016-ish to kind of bring the idea there, but it was our title holder, Brooke Allen, who created Kindness Month in February, and we still celebrate that now. We have a contestant who is a first runner-up from last year who is competing again this year, who brought Adaptive Adventure to the rec center, and she's now an employee of the rec center because of that. So our title holders are making a difference, and that's, I think, what I want you to see is, yeah, does it cost money? Yes, but this city is benefiting from these young women and the programs that they implement and the things that they do behind the scenes. You know this is a passion for me. I've watched these young women, and in the years that I've been involved, more than 100 girls have come through this program. And many of them still come to my house, and we go to dinner, and I know their kids, and I know their husbands, and it's a fantastic sisterhood. I think the biggest thing I want you to understand is this is a legacy. And if you go down to the rec center, you will see 100 years of Miss Pleasant Grove on that wall. That was a come from the heart project. It took hours and a lot of people to create that. And the 100-year anniversary of Miss Pleasant Grove, we had 60 former title holders show up at the pageant and be recognized on stage. So it's a legacy, and it's important not only to these young women and for the changes that they make in their lives, but it's important to this city as well. So that's kind of my emotional part of the presentation. The financial, this is what's important to the city and to the members of the city. Right now, you give us $30,000 a year as a contribution. Of that $30,000, you just heard what the scholarships are. So we take approximately $12,000 to $13,000, we put it directly into scholarships, just for that year. We try to add a little bit more because we want to continue to increase scholarships, so we're trying to build that account. The other part of that is we're paying out of our budget that you give us $12,000 to $14,000 a year for a float. So that leaves us about $5,000, $4,000, $5,000 to run a program. And we all know what costs and services are. That does not even cover the production of the competition, let alone supporting the girls throughout the year. So that's why we're asking for additional. That money will go directly into the scholarship fund so that we can increase those scholarships. And we're going to continue to pound the pavement secure donations so that we can run the operations side of it. That 5,000 will be directly put into the scholarship fund. Now, I had the questions asked to me of other cities in our county, how many of them have a program? And the answer is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cities and 1 county. So we still have 11 organizations in this county that run a Miss program in their city and send a representative to Miss Utah. We just want to continue doing that. We want to continue the legacy, and we want to continue adding scholarship amounts for these young women. Right now, the $4,000 that our title holder gets maybe will cover a semester, depends on where she goes to school. But certainly for the rest of them, it doesn't even cover a semester. So we want to continue that, and that's where the funds are going. So that's
Kim,
what I have to say.
Kim, typically when you go up and Our Lady represents Pleasant Grove up there, what is the cost to go up to Miss Utah?
The cost,
I mean, they go up there for a small, very small percentage of their term,
Yes,
right? For
yes.
a week or less.
so
but-
I actually just paid the invoice, and we cover about $1,800. That includes the Miss America franchise fee, the Miss Utah franchise fee, and then her week up there, food, lodging, participation, and then a couple of other expenses for her to have for that week. So it's less than $2,000. But again, we try not to have that coming out of any of the money that's coming from the city. We put all of the money that we're getting from you, for the most part, I would say 90% of it either is in scholarship or it's on the float. And those are, the float are costs that we can't, it's just part of our contract with the city, is that we are in charge of that.
Kim, what cities, you said 11,
Okay, I can tell you.
what cities are those?
Eagle Mountain,
Okay.
American Fork, Orem, Provo, Lehigh, Springville, Mapleton, Payson,
Oh, Mapleton is. the main
Salem,
one.
Spanish Fork, and Utah County. Now, Mapleton's a part right now of Springville. They have a Springville Mapleton title holder, but I have a little inside knowledge because my daughter-in-law is the communications director at Mapleton City, and they were talking about putting in a Little Miss program, and she has kind of geared them towards having a Mapleton title holder. And they'll run it in partnership with Springville, but now it'll be a Miss Springville and a Miss Mapleton rather than a
Oh, okay, that's where I was
two
off.
city
Okay.
city holder.
Okay.
Other questions? Thank you.
That was easy enough. Okay, so here's my other thing. Now, and this one just kind of came to me yesterday because the kids were over for dinner. And so my daughter-in-law was there. And because they are considering this Mapleton title, some of their administration and city council have called other cities and said, what do you think? And they're all saying, well, yeah, do it because of what they benefit from it, but don't do a float. People are backing out of the floats because the parades since COVID have not been as well attended. And the cost of a float to go to 7 parades, it's like $2,000 a parade. Plus we have to get it there, plus we have to pay a driver for it. So it's not real cost effective, it's just good visual, right? Now, when we go to all the other parades, the only 2 parades that are before ours is Springville and Orem. So we're inviting people to Strawberry Days, and Strawberry Days is over, right? So yes, it's a beautiful float, and yes, they have fun for the first couple of parades, but then they're pretty much over it. It's hot. They don't want to give up their every single weekend for an entire summer to go to parades. So maybe we consider not doing a float, and we have a different way to present our royalty in the Strawberry Days Parade and the Linden Parade. I don't know what that looks like. Off the top of my head, because it's only been a few hours since we talked about it, I'm thinking you're all in Jeeps. Maybe we just get a truck and a big banner and we put them in the back of the truck and we talk about them. We still have them show up for Pleasant Grove and for Linden, but maybe it looks different, because if it does, if it looks different and we choose not to do a float going forward, there's not an increase to our budget, because the $15,000 that we're designating for a float is the $10,000 for the teen program that we would like, and the $5,000 increase for the Miss program. So, just a couple things to think about.
Awesome.
Other questions?
Oh, I'm sorry I was late, but maybe you already covered this, but participation, are we seeing, like this year, I think it just came out, all of the participants are gonna be in the Timpanogos Times. Are we seeing an increase, decrease, pretty much flatline?
We are somewhere between 12 and 16 each year. And once we do an orientation, a couple drop out. So this year we had 18 to begin with, we're at 16. So it is increasing. Each year for the past 4 or 5 years, we've had returners. So girls who have gone through the program but didn't win the title, and they come back to do it again because it is a life changer for a lot of young women. So, yes.
And are we asking Linden to help with costs?
We are. I've got to call into them to see if we can get an increase in their costs. The not concern I have, but I'm going to have to defend that cost, and in the last 5 years, we have not had a Linden Queen. It's always been a Miss PG, and of the 5 royalty members, last year we had one from Linden. I think the year before we had one from Linden, but we are not seeing a lot of money paid out for Linden young women at this point, but there was a time where we had 3 years in a row that it was a Linden girl that was Miss Pleasant Grove. And we've had people ask, well, why don't we do a Miss Pleasant Grove and a Miss Linden? That's not something we're considering at this point because we don't really have a consistent number of Linden girls coming to Pleasant Grove to do this.
How much does Linden participate in?
They only given us 2,000, and that was an increase a few years ago.
Okay.
That's okay. It can be Miss Lady from Pleasant Grove. It's okay.
Sure, sure.
Well, and then the Little Miss Linden is not associated with our
No,
Miss
not
Pleasant Grove.
affiliated with us at all. And they go, I think, to age 13. And we've talked about the teen program in years past. We have Little Miss Linden, who goes to age 13. We have Little Miss Strawberry Days that go to age 11, but we don't have anything for the young women that are in the middle. And the junior high years are the worst years for young women. They just really are. They're learning who they are, and they're creating their tribe and trying to figure life out, and that's what we want to capture. We want to make this a consistent program where we start with Little Miss Strawberry Days, and by the way, we got 32 essays this year. We're just now in judging for that. So we have 32 essays this year for Little Miss Linden. We have nothing for the teens, and then our Miss program starts at age 17. So we're missing this demographic, and we want to capture them and give them the same service and scholarship opportunities that we're giving our misses. And it just creates a better program if there's just a flow all the way through. We're starting at Little Miss. We're seeing a couple girls now that were Little Misses the very first year who are competing in Miss Pleasant Grove this year. So it's fantastic to have that, but we're losing them in the middle. And you've heard it. We had a couple young women come last year to present that they wanted a teen program because that's the age group they're in right now. So we'd love nothing more than to add that program. It's a lot more work, but I think it's beneficial. And one thing to note too, every bit of this is volunteer, including the judges. This, especially this time of year, is a second full-time job for me. In fact, it's probably more hours than what I put into my real job. Through the rest of the year, it's probably 20 to 30 hours a week for me. For the committee, it's a full-time job in the months of February through April, May. So it's all 100% volunteer. None of us get paid for this. We do this because we love this, and we do this because we see the impact it's making on these young women. And we hope that you're seeing it too as they're out and about in the city, because they really are working hard.
Okay, thank you.
Questions? You're welcome.
Okay, to close the loop on the float, because my understanding is if you're going to do a float, Kim, sorry? If you're going to do a float this year, we have to decide like now, right?
Decide because we have to purchase a new chassis and build it out and then create the float on top of that. And parade season starts the second week of June.
I love the idea of putting them in a Jeep like us or a larger vehicle that they can, 2 or 3 or 4 can be on there, right?
Is-
And I
is-
think
is-
it's a cheaper, and then you can turn around and use that money for,
Is Modern Display the only one that sells chassis?
They don't even sell chassis.
We'd have to go find one.
you gotta rip down the,
All right. Yeah, let's,
I don't know, I sat on the Freedom Festival Parade Committee Board. And I'll just say that if Pleasant Grove shows up with their royalty on a Jeep, we're gonna look like we belong in Mona and not in Pleasant
Okay,
Grove.
it's an interesting perspective.
Now, I love Mona,
Hey,
I was born in Mona.
Denise didn't live too far from
and
me.
I love Erda, but I'm just gonna say that, I don't know how I feel about the cost. I think there is a real cost. But there's also gonna be a perception then, if our royalty shows up in the back of a truck.
Are we in the Freedom Festival?
No.
Why do we need to go?
She's saying not other parades. She's saying only the strawberry. Day.
And then don't even show up to the
Yes.
other parades.
Go to the
Yes,
other
that's what-
parades.
We're actually going to pull from Freedom Festival because we're not supporting Follow the Flag or the events that are going on here in our city on the 4th.
Because of lack of participation.
Yeah, that could be true. I mean, I don't know. It's interesting because all of the other royalties do all of those other parades.
But I
And-
thought, Kim, you were saying that only 2 cities are doing floats. Is that right?
No, not 2 cities, but the parades are getting smaller and the cities are not going to as many.
They're not participating?
We have a lot of floats. We have Central Bank, we have Crumble, we have Splash Summit. We have a lot of business floats.
Because they do every parade. But you're saying it's hard for the
They're
girls to
advertising.
do every single parade?
I think if
The girls have to give up their summer to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we talk to Lisa, she could probably go back historically and see how many floats we have and how many are coming from cities. I'm gonna say 4 or 5 are probably coming from cities.
So, and I wonder if a business would actually accommodate 3 girls on a float.
Maybe.
Like
If we
ask
could get it.
Central Bank to make 3 spots.
That's a
So,
good idea.
just speaking from, as the greedy city administrator, for us not to have to spend 25 grand on a chassis would, I think that would be nice. Now, but, I mean,
think
that's
it-
the consequence. We're not gonna have a float, so.
Yeah, and I think it has to go to the bigger, the larger discussion, right? I mean, if we're just gonna axe the float, I mean, I think that's a discussion that we can have, or a topic that we can have. But, I guess I'm seeing a lack of, that's the wrong way of saying that. I'm loving the Little Miss. I think I would love the Miss Teen, because of their engagement in the city,
In our community.
in our community, right? What I'm not liking, and I'll maybe go on the record even saying this out loud, is I'm not liking the path to Miss Utah,
The state,
the state. I think we pay a lot of money for that.
2,000.
I think there's a lot of girls that just want to do that, so they keep competing. And I don't want to be a venue for that. I want to be a venue for PG. If these are public funds, and they are, then they need to be spent for girls that have their heart here and can participate fully here. Not that the other Miss PGs haven't. I'm not saying that, for sure. But just want to make sure the focus, I think that's why I love the Miss Teen, is that,
Well, and I was interested that she said the sentence that the 2,000 was not out of the 25.
We raise money for that, but sorry, Scott.
Go ahead,
If
Scott.
we have
You
a
can
teen,
answer this better than I can.
yeah, and if we
Yeah.
have a teen program, they are also affiliated with Miss America's Teen. So they would also go to a state pageant. But we're putting the money that the city gives us into scholarship and into float, and there's maybe $4,000 to $5,000 left. And we have to put on a production for that, support the girls through the year, send them to Miss Utah. And that's why we also are selling tickets, why we're getting ad pages, why we are approaching businesses and getting funds donated to us so that we can pay for those expenses. Because we're not taking scholarship money away. You can see where we started and where we are now, from $5,700 now up to $12,500. Our heart and our intent is to give these girls scholarship money. That's what we want to do. Ideally, we would be able to pay for a full year of scholarship for our title holder and at least a semester for our royalty members. But right now, we can't do that. But that is our intent, and that's what we're working toward. We're not gonna take money away from scholarship or other funds to pay for the Miss Utah representation. And honestly, these girls, they do wanna go to Miss Utah, but they know what they have to do in Pleasant Grove. And it's not a distraction. Prepping for Miss Utah is not a distraction. They serve their whole year. You've seen them out. I've given you examples. I don't think Miss Utah is the distraction, and it's a small piece of where we put money.
If it wasn't affiliated with Miss America, would that hurt the numbers of girls wanting to participate?
I can't say for certain, but I'm sure it would, because our girls do get excited to go to Miss Utah.
Okay,
Okay.
so, I don't think we have to decide that. The thing we need to decide today is whether we want to float or not. And so if we're okay not to have the float, then we will proceed by not worrying about that budget number so that they don't have to get on it and worry about doing a float. And then we can continue our discussion before we finalize our budget on how we want to finance Miss PG.
So this is for Kim again, sorry, I waited till you sat down.
That's all right, because there something that I probably should have said anyway.
No.
So go ahead.
So
Eric.
what's your gut feeling if we went to it doesn't have to be a Jeep, a larger vehicle that could be decorated on the side, whatever, I don't know. Would we be seen as Mona? Sorry,
Which
Steve.
would be an honor. I just want to just say that.
Coming from small town, yeah, Orangeville
A little,
days
a little,
for
yeah,
me.
a little
Orangeville
smaller.
I just want to
town
know your
feel.
gut feeling, because
Nice, I guess
I've
that's
seen
what
in
we
other
want.
cities that they've went to where all three of them are actually sitting in a convertible on the back waving. I mean,
Right.
and people are not saying, oh, they're podunk, right? They're just saying, hey, there's all three.
So this is what I think. I think if we go away from a float, there's two things. We won't go to all the other city parades. We'll just do Strawberry Days in Linden. But I think
I like that.
our old timers, like the people who are just been here forever and ever and ever, I think it's gonna be difficult for them to transition out of seeing that float.
And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Because it's just change and it doesn't
Right.
mean
It-
it's.
it- Yeah, and changes, and yeah.
And if we
it
can put
just
the
is what
money
happens.
towards, I'd rather have it go towards education for those participating
Mm-hmm.
and the service they're giving. And it sounds like if the number of parades is going to be reduced financially, it doesn't make sense to continue that large of a purchase. It seems like there's been a lot of issues over the years with it breaking down, having to
Starting
find
on
someone.
fire.
Yeah, starting on fire.
Right.
We'll scratch that from the record. And so it just seems like it could be financially used in a better way. And I think if other cities are moving towards that as well, then we'll
Right.
just kind of be joining with them and,
I mean, I'd much rather see our girls attending Follow the Flag on that day, right, July 4th?
yeah, I
right?
would too.
Because a lot of times we were trying to, as a family, try and split our time, and finally we just said, no, we're sticking to our hometown.
Right, and
Right.
that's what we would like to do too. We want to support hometown.
So if we didn't do the float, then would we need the increase that's being requested? Could we put that money back towards the program, the teen, instead of having an additional 10,000?
Yeah, so the way the math works in my mind, the 25,000 was a capital project, that was for the chassis, that would go away. The 30,000, so they get 25,000 from general fund and 5 from CARE, that would stay intact because 15 of that was going towards the float. So they can use some of that for scholarship, but then they can also do the Miss Teen program now.
So we wouldn't need the
And the number
additional
stays
increase?
budget neutral, it
Okay.
stays the same.
Well, does it stay budget neutral into the future though? Because the chassis purchase was a one-time thing, or is it 25?
Yeah,
a
so we
year?
have 30 in operations. So we have the 25 in capital, and then we have the
One
30 in operations. So this 25 would just absorb back into the capital projects fund. The 30 stays intact because the cost of the float was coming out of the operational every year.
Yeah, but
But
then they
then
need
there's an additional 10
then they
every
need an
year.
additional 10 per year for the Miss Teen.
But that's what we're saying,
I
we
know,
wouldn't
but
need
so
that.
they're using operationally $15,000 a year to decorate the float.
That would go
The
towards modern
chassis was
display.
just for the frame.
So Kim, if we increase it by $5,000 and don't do a float, then you would say that we would be doing both Miss Pleasant Grove and Miss Teen Pleasant Grove.
No, I'm saying.
You don't need to
even
increase
have
it at
give
all.
us
We don't even need to do that.
Okay.
The teen program, 10,000, and the increase of 5,000 that we're asking for actually takes place of the 15,000 we're
Correct.
not spending on a float now. So it's cost neutral. We
Okay.
wouldn't need an
I
increase.
So you
at
don't
all.
need an
Because
increase
there's
at
a
all this
chassis
year.
and
Yeah.
bill.
So the
Okay.
budget number stays the same, and then they can get where they need to go.
Okay.
So, okay, I'm gonna try not to get emotional. I will put on my hat of the chamber president. It's been amazing about what these girls do in the community, the service that they provide, the businesses they visit. They come out to all the events, the ribbon cuttings. And then even this last year, even with, we have a visitor back there, Sarah. Even with your even with your daughters, and then this last year, seeing what Marissa has done with the backpacks, truly amazing. What our community sees, what they do in the schools, what choose kindness, PG Cares. From the bottom of my heart, I say thank you, because I really do see the effect, and I have people asking me, this is amazing what happens, so thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for supporting us. And Sarah made a good point, and so I'll end with this. You asked about the Miss Utah, and does it take away from what they're doing in Pleasant Grove? Is this just a pathway to Miss Utah? Eric just said it. No, they serve for an entire year. They give their crown away in April and don't go to Miss Utah until June, right? So it's not a conflict. They're serving the city for an entire year. And what you don't know is on top of the fees that we have to pay to get them there, they're putting in thousands of dollars, either fundraising for themselves, or their parents are paying, or they have a job to pay for all the other expenses that are incurred at Miss Utah. And having had a daughter do it 3 times before she won that title of Miss Utah, it's expensive. So yeah, they do this because they love it, but they also love Miss Utah and the experience that they get there. And they have a fantastic board that runs the program. So these girls are getting a lot out of this program on a city level and on a state level.
And she's not here, Shaylin?
Shaylee,
Sorry. It's amazing, but what she experienced of running last year, and which then she took her CSI and implemented it in our city. It's pretty cool.
and she's back this year. She
Yeah.
loves it enough that she's competing
that's
again. We've
awesome.
got 4 returners this year. Yeah.
Well, I will just say I'm gonna probably be one of those old timers that's sad to not have a float, but I can see the money.
Geez, Steve, you
No,
don't know
I've
what
gone
even
back and
old
forth
time
in
is
the last
about.
24 hours on this for sure, about the flow and the optics of that. I really have.
Yeah.
So
Now,
really,
Rod-
it just is gonna, it'll be obviously up to you how you want to present that and what you want to do with that, but.
Rogers and Russell could sponsor a float.
Yeah, I mean,
We-
the
we'd
ROI
do
on
that.
that's
We'd-
probably not quite there, but
We'd ride on that float. All right, I'll stay for a
you
minute.
can
if
ride
have
in
more
my bus.
questions.
That's what we do. So you can ride in the bus.
When the hate mail from Mona starts showing up, I'm just forward on to you, Steve.
I love Mona. It's a beautiful town. That was,
great town.
that was out of place.
Poor Mona tonight.
I love Mona.
You'll
We're
make
catching some
KSL.
strays tonight. Okay, we do have a little bit of budget stuff
Little bit
to
of budget
discuss
stuff there.
tonight. So, Steve, you weren't here when I was talking initially. We took your list. I don't know if you saw what Todd did. He kind of condensed it into some bullet points, and so we're gonna kind of
I
work
took it
through
from
that.
lawyer speak to business speak is what I
Yeah,
did,
yeah,
Steve.
uh-huh.
Bad combination.
Lawyers are paid by the hour. We're paid on ROI.
Bad combination. Bad
Okay,
combination.
so I just want to start with just a couple general comments. One of the things that was brought up is, are we heading into an economic recession? And do we need to be cautious about that in regards to our budgeting for this year? I don't know what our future holds nationally as far as what we're going to look like economically. Utah's economy is one of the best in the nation, and that's great. We do, when we budget, did you have a question?
Well, I'll answer that. We had luncheon today with Zions coming in, and they brought some figures and people from Kim Gardner and Hinckley.
Yeah.
And they were very optimistic about Utah's economy and
Yeah.
indicators,
Yeah.
right? They always talk about indicators, and so, I mean, and people brought up, hey, we've been hearing this for the last 4 or 5 years, right?
Yeah.
And they typically say Utah is pretty strong, right? And they're, I hate to quote them, but they said they're pretty confident.
Yeah.
So, but anyway.
As a business owner and a business representative, I see no indications of a downturn.
So when we budget philosophically, this is Denise that does most of the work on this. Her and I do spend a little time together as we look at how we want to do this for the coming year. When we estimate our revenues, we are conservative. We feel like we underestimate our revenues.
You've been pretty spot on.
And, well, we haven't been spot on in the sense that we've been turning surpluses every year. So, because what that means is when we get to the end of the year and we have $2 million more in revenue than we do expenses, that is a byproduct of the conservative budgeting. So I call that headroom. We have about $2 million of headroom in our budget. So if we did have some sort of downturn, for the most part, I think we would be okay to absorb that. Now now if we get into a major recession similar to what we got into, now Denise and I were both doing this in 2008, 9, and 10, when we did have to start slashing city budgets, we did have to lay people off. Those were not fun times, but that was over the course of 3 years. I mean, that downturn hit sort of quickly, but it gave us time. It gave cities time to kind of adjust and figure out what they needed to do. One of the things, and I talked to Steve about this, was I made a comment about the projection for the sales tax revenues, that statewide, at least for 2024, they were relatively flat. For Pleasant Grove City, they weren't flat. We are going to see an increase in our sales tax from last year to this year. And so we hope that we continue to see growth. Part of that is we are seeing new businesses come to our city. A lot of them are smaller type. We don't have big boxes per se that are coming in, but all of these smaller businesses, that sales tax does add up. So we are projecting an increase in our sales tax revenues for this year. In fact, Denise put the numbers for 2024 together. If I grab the right sheet. All right, Denise.
I got mine.
You have it? I thought I had it. Thank you. So for our fiscal year 24 budget, so this was the fiscal year that ended June 30th, 2024, we had budgeted for 9.6 million, and we ended up with, our actuals were 10.1 million. So we were about $450,000 more than what we had budgeted for. Again, that's the conservative budgeting. For fiscal year 2025, which is the year we're currently in, we budgeted 10.1 million. Our estimate right now is that we will be at 10.3 million, so about a $200,000 increase from what we have budgeted. And then our fiscal year budget number for this year is 10.4 million. So we are building in some growth into our sales tax numbers. Those are not like super big numbers that we're projecting, but we are projecting growth. So we're not projecting flat. We're not projecting it going down at this point. Okay, so with that, I've got just a list of things here that I want to go over. Some of these I'm going to answer. Some I'm going to have Dion come up and talk about. I do want to say some of the questions that were asked were regarding the rec center and some of the costs associated with that. So what was being proposed in the budget was some painting in the rec center, redoing some floors, and a new audio system. Megan's not here this week, so we'll move that discussion to April 8th. When she's here, then we will get more specific on that request from the rec department so that she can answer those questions for you. I do want to talk about, let me start with our one-pager, and we'll transition back to the list. Okay, the one-pager is what it looks like here. On the left side is our additional revenues. We went over this 2 weeks ago. There's nothing really changed on the revenues with the exception of we added an admin allocation. So our enterprise funds, water, sewer, storm drain, they do send money over to the general fund to account for some of the time and some of the utilities and things that we pay for out of the general fund that supports the utility funds. And so we do have an allocation that comes back. That is seen as a revenue back to the general fund. And so that's our revenues. We're anticipating about an additional $1 million in revenue. And then on the right side would be the recommended uses of that. So full-time and part-time wages would take most of that, about $760,000. That is a 5.05% increase, which would be 2.7% COLA and 2.35% merit. And if you wonder where the 2.35, it sounds like a random number. We have a step and grade with our police and fire, and one merit step is 2.35%. So that's how we settle on that number. We also are asking, I'm gonna talk about the part-time positions first, part-time fire inspector and some additional custodial. We'll get into the custodial in a minute. We're also looking at doing a 2% 401K match. There's a cost to that, $139,000. That would be if we have 75% of our employees participate in that. I believe one of the questions that was asked 2 weeks ago is if there's gonna be some sort of vesting. Our intention is that there would be. We still haven't fleshed that out exactly, but we wanna make sure there is a reason for people to stick around if we're gonna help fund their retirement plan. We also have operational increases, which we'll get into the detail of that in a minute. Our medical dental came back at a 0% increase, which is awesome. I still remember the days of 15 and 20% increases. Those were no fun. We do have our property and liability insurance through the Utah Local Governments Trust. We have not received their number yet, so we could see an increase on the expense side there. Our money right now that we're looking for, making sure that this balances, is we're short $124,000. If I have a guess, as we get future sales tax numbers, we're gonna be able to bridge that gap with sales tax, or if we feel comfortable with changing any of these other revenue
Does
lines.
that come in June, if I remember correctly, first week of June?
The sales tax?
The sales tax number?
We get the number each month,
Each month? Oh,
but the number we get is for 2 months prior. So we got a number in March, but that was for the January sales,
got it.
if that makes sense. So anyway, is there any questions that outside of the stuff I said we are gonna talk about in a
Yeah.
minute? Go ahead, Eric.
Well, your third line item, you had discussions, how did discussions go? Or are we leaving that offline?
Which one? The
Third
full-time position?
item, like, full-time position.
Yeah, no, we'll talk about that as
Okay.
well. Okay, because that was all on the list, and so I wanna run through the list here and answer questions the best I can, hopefully enhance you with some more detail. Like I said, I'm probably gonna jump around on this list a little bit. One of the things that was mentioned was potentially a second code enforcement officer, potentially a part-time enforcement officer, and then a parking enforcement officer. So 2 different positions. We don't, I mean, we can put a number on what these would cost the city. What we're probably struggling is figuring out the revenue side. You know, we don't want to get into the minds that we would have a quota that would need to be met in order to fund these positions. The reality is if we do fund these positions, it would be with the intention that we are trying to enforce. And so when we have people that ignore enforcement, then it ends up with a fine or a ticket of some manner. And so if you look at pretty much any city's budget, particularly those that have parking enforcement, those positions are generally paid for by the parking tickets that are issued. So for a parking enforcement officer, if we did $20 an hour for 20 hours a week, is roughly $24,000 a year. That would be the cost of the position. Well, we don't necessarily have we could boil that down into the number of tickets that would need to be written in order to recoup that cost. But again, I don't want to necessarily tie those 2 together. I don't think that's the message we want to send. However, if we feel like we do have some parking issues to a somewhat serious extent, then this would be part of that. So we have pinpointed one parking issue, which is out on 220 South. We just call it the McKay Christensen project, where we had some townhomes built. They don't have garages. We have people right now that are parking on private property. The private property people enforced for a minute. Those people moved. They started parking on the street. We did get it red curb. Chief, did we do a ticket or 2 during that moment? Yeah.
So can our code enforcement write parking tickets?
So I believe so.
She can? Uh-huh.
No, she can't do a parking
Oh,
citation?
She can't? Can she?
We got a nod from Chief.
Yeah, he was saying yes.
I almost think that's maybe more of a Tina question.
Well,
Well,
as I remember,
could she
a
be
few years ago,
authorized?
we kind of brought these together, right? Because the first part was, she doesn't have, or let's just say
The
code
authority?
enforcement. Code enforcement didn't have the authority to do anything, and so we said, well, for
Give her
heaven's
the
sake,
authority.
solve that,
Yeah.
right? And as I remember, we gave her authority to report to the police department to
Write tickets?
write
Well,
tickets and
it
do whatever
was
she
to put
needed.
on Spielman, and so we need to,
Looked like
I need to
tight-
get a
tighten
better
that up little
answer
bit.
for you on that.
I mean, if there's a way she can be authorized to do that, that might solve a lot of the problem.
Yeah, I think the issue we run into with parking, particularly with this particular place, is that is more of a nighttime issue. Our code enforcement works during the day. So they would either need to change their hours and come out, because during the day is not necessarily when we have the parking issues, it's when people get home from work and they need to park.
But regardless, I think I would like to see her authorized to be able to write those citations, whether it's,
Yeah.
whatever the hours are. So I think
Yeah.
moving in that
And
direction.
we may have already done that. I just need to double check that with Tina, that we've done that.
Well, what's Chief's thoughts on that? I mean,
I
Or we
think
can-
Chief's okay if our code
Okay.
enforcement writes tickets. Is that fair
He
to
was,
say?
he was nodding yes.
Yeah. Yeah, because I remember we went down this road, I just can't
Yeah.
remember exactly where that ended up. I'm pretty sure we don't have code enforcement right now writing parking tickets. Because we talked about if somebody had abandoned a vehicle on the side of the street, who has the authority to tag it? I'm pretty sure we gave that authority to Gail. But when it comes to towing it, it's almost like we had to go back to the PD and say, okay, you're the ones that need to call in the tow truck or whatever.
I mean, and if she can do that as well, I mean, let's just define like what her role is and
Yeah.
how much authority we can give her. And
Yeah.
if we can give her that full
Yeah.
authority, that would be great. And
Yeah.
take some burden off of the officers to, do kind of the more heavy-duty work, and she can be doing that.
Yeah. So one of the things is when I'm going to step out of parking and go back to kind of code. So when we have code issues, for the most part, people are compliant once we give them a notice, and we give them 30 days to clean up their property or whatever. We don't find a whole lot in code. And so for us to have potential fines to help offset the cost of a part-time code, I don't know if there's enough revenue to even have that be a consideration. So let us get our stuff together as staff, and when we come back on April 8th, we'll have a little better answer on some of the parking enforcement and whether it would make sense for us to consider a part-time parking enforcement. I think the email stated that there might be issues around schools and stuff too.
Yeah, I like the routes to schools,
Yeah,
the walking route. I mean, coming down to Grove Crest there, I think there's some issues.
Yeah.
Because there's no sidewalks in some of the places, and then some of the vehicles park where a child would probably be able to walk safely,
Yeah.
so. But also, I mean, also a part of this discussion is if, Daniel and his team feel like they're already kind of maximized in what they're able to do enforcement-wise
Yeah.
because with time and what hours she's working, and whether or not we need an additional position, or whether the current position has enough bandwidth to do parking as well.
yeah, and just based on, we got these on Thursday, most of the stuff we can answer, but that's one that we probably need to go a little bit deeper on. So we can, we'll bring that back to you April 8th as far as what the options are, if that's okay with everybody. Okay, the one thing that's in the budget that I've been proposing is, I call it a PR person. I was chatting with Todd about this, and this isn't a hardcore PR person. This is.
It's not even a PR person.
Yeah, it's more of a social media, somebody that is going to enhance our social media.
Yeah.
It's going to be ways that we can promote the city better than what we promote.
Or maybe even, can I say it different?
Yeah, go ahead.
Even evangelize what is currently occurring in our city better.
Yeah,
Actually getting information
From the department heads, from the city,
to the resident.
yes.
so we look at what library does. They do a good job of some of that. Our rec department does a pretty good job of some of that. And so what I'm proposing is taking a part-time person that we already have, enhancing their hours, somebody that has experience in that, to a point where they will now be the ones, they'll still be doing other things for us based on what they're already assigned to do. And then they would have an extra 10 hours a week in which they could help enhance our social media. Evangelize, that's a good word. My opinion, and this has probably been a weakness of mine, is that we don't do a great job of promoting all the good things that we do in Pleasant Grove. So that would be the intention of that position that we're asking for in
Well, and
the,
so I think that, understanding that position, Scott, the question that kind of I have that still is unanswered is, we have Lisa doing some of that.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what her role
Yeah.
would probably be defined as, in
Yeah.
fact. And so are we having an overlapping role, or I don't want to say, are we replacing Lisa, because that's kind of not the discussion we want to have right now. But
Yeah.
is that role then kind of an overlapping role, or how is it distinct?
I don't see it as overlapping in the sense that Lisa's gonna handle almost our press release type stuff. So, for instance, yesterday we put out that the park we're doing our soft opening, 2 o'clock on Saturday. That is something I send to Lisa. Lisa cleans it up and makes it look good, and then she puts it out on social media. She's still gonna fulfill that role. She's the one that's on there that's answering questions when people ask questions about what's going on in the city. That's Lisa's role. This role would be more promotional in a sense of, I would love to have employee profiles. You know, we interview an employee and we do a little 2-minute clip and show what they do and show the benefit and the service they're providing to the community, and then put that out there so our residents can put a face with the person that's plowing their roads. And they know what goes into plowing roads. We're gonna show them, okay, this is how we attach the, I mean, it's almost like a ride-along without doing a ride-along. So I see it as 2 different roles. I see Lisa fulfilling probably what I call more of a hard news, and then this other person would do what I would call a little bit more of the fluffy stuff, which is.
Is it, not rep, sorry, that was a brain. Is it a department-specific focus for some of these roles?
No, for the one I'm talking about, it's
Yes.
gonna be a citywide.
Citywide, okay, all right.
But they will be involved with specific departments. For instance, if it's gonna be profiling a snowplow driver, of course, that's gonna be Public Works. If it's gonna be profiling, we're gonna walk around Cook Family Park and we're gonna film some of the features that are available there. And we're gonna make it look really cool and exciting, and then we're gonna post that. That's a little bit different than saying, okay, this is when the soft
So
opening
it
is.
enhances or supports what we currently have with Lisa?
Yes, well, in my mind, it's almost somewhat separate, because we are doing great things as a city, but we're not telling anybody that. And that is the focus of what I want this person to do is, okay, here's the cool stuff we're doing that we internally know. I mean, for the most part, we do our year-end review with the city council, and when we're done, it's like, holy cow,
The residents don't know that.
they don't know that.
Scott,
Yeah,
if I can real quick, so what Lisa does right now is more of, she shares information. She does not create content. This position, as I understand it, is to help market the city, to create the content.
Okay.
thank you.
So could this position do both?
Well, not with the hours allotted. I mean, you're talking about what Lisa does?
Yeah, so could one full-time position
If we,
do
so
what,
this,
do
the
both?
full-time, sorry, the full-time position I'm proposing is only an extra 10 hours a week. They're likely gonna be doing 30 hours a week doing what they're already doing for the city. So this is not 40 hours a week going on top of that. That's an extra 10 hours a week.
Or would we rather?
And I think that'd be just something you'd speak with Lisa about, the collaboration
Oh, yeah.
and everything.
Well, so right now, we do a monthly meeting, me, Lisa, Kyler, because Kyler's the one that is kind of doing some of the PR, but he just doesn't have a ton of time to do that. We are getting a new person to replace Kyler, but this person would also then sit in on those monthly meetings as we plan out what we want to say.
Wait, where's Kyler going?
He's taking another job.
I mean, so,
Wait.
so I think I understand what you're saying, Scott, and there's maybe, there's some things I'm thinking about that I might have to follow up with you on. 'cause
No, I mean, you and I talked yesterday about maybe more of an overarching, let's just hire a full-time person and have them do all of
Hey,
this.
Kyler, I'm so sorry. Like, why am I spacing? Like, I just thought you'd be here forever. No, I want it now. No. Kyler, no.
Wait,
That was our.
That was a
initial
hard right
reaction.
turn, I think.
Hey, that
from what
was a
we're
little bit
talking
of a
about.
hard right turn.
wait.
Now I'm really annoyed.
You weren't aware?
Well, no, I don't.
It was an
Guess
awesome
not.
email.
Okay.
Well,
All right, let's, on the task here.
We do have 4 minutes to
Yeah.
cover 40 minutes worth of material.
All right, so maybe we put a pin in that, because I have some additional questions, but yeah.
Okay,
we
and
can
that's
talk
fair
about
enough.
And I'm happy to be in that conversation with you if you want.
Because what we're going to do, since we're not going to get through all this in a work session, is we'll come back in our general session when we're done with our business, and we'll finish up on that. I don't want people to get worried that now we're going to go so fast that we're going to get lost in what's going on. So for the next couple minutes, let's just cover a couple more items. So we'll, again, we're not deciding today on these things. This is, we still have April 8th, we still have April 22nd. Our tentative budget is May 6th. That is the day I hope we're pretty much there with where we want to be with budget. Okay, so let's skip to Sherry and furniture real quick, because Dion's got a list of items, so I don't want to pull him up here just for one or two. I do want to talk custodial and janitorial. That was one of the things on the list. That's going to be a little bit of a discussion. So Sherry, you mind coming up and giving a little detail on what you're thinking on the furniture?
Told me it was a good idea to itemize. So it's kind of an estimate.
Why do you need bar stools? I'm teasing. That's not on here.
Take care of council.
Right. Okay, so,
I just have one question.
yeah, sure.
How do you have a refrigerator from the 70s that still works? I can't get.
I think they made
I can't
things
get a
better back
refrigerator
then.
that was made in 2015 to work.
But if you come look at it, you will go, that was in my house in 1973.
Wow.
It's the color and everything from 1970s.
It's better.
All right.
And it still works, but it's probably an energy hog.
Yeah.
So these are estimates. I went off of a couple of furniture, library and commercial furniture websites to get the prices. So some would be a little less, some may be a little more, but that's about it. So we actually asked for 60,000, and I just kept going till we ran out of what we wanted. So I actually came up with almost 71,000. But obviously, we wouldn't get all of that.
Does this really replace most or all of the current furniture in the library?
No.
What would be left, or what would be still needed?
The round, well, actually, they're square, tables and chairs that people sit at around the library. Those were also used from a KSL sale that I think were about 30 years old when I bought them, but they're still in good shape. They need a shampooing, but otherwise they're in good shape. But, yeah.
So what we did is we really redid the library a couple years ago.
It's been 7,
Oh my goodness, really?
yeah.
7 years ago, but we really just kept the same furniture.
No,
Did we replace it back then?
replaced most of it with KSL
Used
furniture.
furniture.
Okay,
Used
with
KSL
furniture.
furniture.
Okay, so this is new, okay. All right,
Yeah.
that's all I needed.
Any other questions?
Okay, we can wrap up the work session, Mayor, and we'll resume the budget discussion and council meeting.
Okay. We asked for a motion to